Welcome back. You are watching News Centre. India and European Union have an aspiration to conclude the FTA talks by the year end, but we are more focused on the content than the date. That's the word coming in from the new European Union ambassador to India, Hervin Delphin. He also added that the investment protection is a priority for the European Union. And after 6 successful rounds of negotiations, both sides are trying to see if the red lines can be adjusted. For some context, India and the EU have a total bilateral trade in goods amounting to 88 billion euros as of 2021. This is a 35% jump compared to bilateral trade of 65 billion euros in 2020. I caught up with the ambassador and began by asking him about his key priorities for the India-EU relationship.
The relationship between the EU and India has been thriving over the past year. So there is a positive momentum. And for me, clearly my objective is to sustain and maintain this momentum of the deepening and widening of our strategic partnership. In concrete terms, it means that we have this economic and trade agenda, which is a big one, a substantial one. I would say commensurate to the size of our respective economies. There is a lot of untapped potential there. If you look at the figures in terms of trade, in terms of investment, and the needs on the Indian side for expanding its economy, on the interest of Europe to find new markets, new opportunities. This is one area. The second, I think both sides are committed to a green world, and I think making sure in our bilateral relationship we develop a green, sustainable economic environment that is compliant with low carbon economy, sustainable infrastructures is something that we want to take forward in our relationship here in India, but also in the region. So that's second. The third, I think, has to do with, maybe linked to the first one, is as a two, let's say, powers for good in the world. We are both committed to a more, I would say, stable environment globally. We are committed to the forward of global solutions to global challenges. And this is where we are with India, whether it's about sustainable development, climate, biodiversity, name it. This is how we move forward together in pushing this global agenda. I think we are sort of natural partners.
Absolutely. I'd like to ask you about the FTA negotiations as well. How have they been progressing? How would you describe the current status of talks?
I think first is, for both parts, this FTA stands out as a massive undertaking because it's probably one of the biggest FTA that the EU has ever negotiated. And I think it's the same for India. So one should not underestimate what it represents in terms of the complexity and the importance of the negotiation. So it's really about negotiating a state-of-the-art, modern, comprehensive FTA. And for that, you have on both sides 2 negotiating teams that have to work across the board of addressing all the issues. So what you see is a strong political backing and support for this negotiation to progress. And in fact, over the last year, there have been 6 rounds of negotiation, which is, by EU standards, quite a demonstration of our commitment to advance. So we made progress along the way. I think there was a sense at the last round and the discussions between Minister Goyal and the European Vice President Dombrovskis that both sides should try to adjust their respective offers, more be mindful of the other's red line. And this is what the negotiating team is now, actually there is a round as we talk in Brussels, as discussing how they can adjust their respective offers so that basically we end up with a result where everyone has a sense that it has a fair share. But it's a difficult negotiation, and I don't think what one should say, because it's a difficult negotiation, that means that we are not committed. I think we should not be mistaken about that. It's a complex, it's highly technical, so it takes the time it needs to advance. So that's where we are now.
Okay, so what would be those red lines for the European Union?
I think this is for the negotiators to honestly to decide and to discuss. I think the
priority areas.
The European Commission is now also consulting with member states. I think it's at this point in time what matters for us is how do we guarantee the protection of investment, for example? I think it's an important point. Put yourself into the shoes of a European investor that comes to India. It's a rather high price market entry. So he wants to have a certain degree of assurance. And we think that in the context of the FTA, we can negotiate those conditions that give the confidence to business from Europe to enter the Indian market and actually have a sort of environment which they feel friendly and comfortable with. So this is one concrete example of what we will try to achieve through the FTA.
Okay. Any timelines that you could share with us? By when would the European Union and India like to conclude this?
I think there was a lot of aspiration to conclude by the end of the year. I don't know whether we will be there. I think it is a massive undertaking to conclude by the end of the year. The question we should ask ourselves is what is most important, the deadline or the content? I think on the European side we are more interested in the content. And anyway, should the negotiation accelerate, we will be responding that call. We will be ready. We will do whatever it takes to be there. So for me, the timeline is not necessarily the defining factor, it's the quality of the substance of the discussion, of the negotiation that is the most defining element here.
So significantly, you said that both sides have gone back to their respective drawing rooms and are working on their red lines to see where things can be adjusted.
Exactly. I think this is important that you start from the negotiation from different positions. You talk, you discuss, you exchange, you look at how you approach on different files. And at some moment, there is a sort of stock taking and realize that we are not adjusted. And you think, I need to adjust. I need maybe to make compromise. And the overall package is okay for both sides.
All right. On the iMac corridor, this was supposedly a game changer for Europe, Middle East, US, India. Do you think it's been derailed by the Israel-Hamas war?
So some like to say that it could be a collateral, that it could be affected. My answer to that is the optics may give the impression that, okay, it will be indeed a collateral. My take, it is not, because what we are talking about with the iMac, it's a generational, transformational project. It's in the long run. And it's not because the conditions now are such in West Asia, in the Middle East, that it will prevent those who have stakes into this project to do the groundwork which is necessary. So there is a lot to be done about the technical feasibility, about the engagement of the private sector, about mobilizing the finance that will come with it. So even though today not all conditions would be met, what you see is President Biden last week reiterated his support to the project. The UAE Prime Minister did the same, and the EU done the same. So it's not because you have this now, this terrible situation in West Asia, that it would immediately bury this project. On the contrary, I think this shows that such a project, by linking up, and I would say creating the economic solidarity, can be the stabilizer for the region. So that is our true belief, and also a conveyor of prosperity for everyone.
Right. Any concerns that you would have on the Indian side that you've been probably asked to convey by the European Union, either on the regulatory side or the political side? Recently we came out with regulations, and now this is an import authorization that companies need to take for importing computers, laptops, small form servers, into small factor devices into India. So how do you feel about these?
In general terms, the EU doesn't really like quantitative restrictive measures. It has to be done in a graded manner. It has to be made with a certain degree of predictability. So on that point, I would say for us, it's important that the different economic actors have the opportunity to have a saying, that there is an opportunity for consultation. Because at the end of the day, if there are reasons and concerns from the Indian government to take such measures, at least it should be made in a way that the economic actors can prepare themselves. So this is, if this is done, that's fine. But this is where we would say that for whatever the purpose which is behind the measures or of this nature for the laptop, as I said, important is that the economic actors are not taken by surprise, and they are given the chance to comment and can be consulted. And I think this is what has been taking place since the measures was announced.
Right. On the CBAM, there was a bit of concern on the Indian side as to what impact will it have on Indian companies. Is the European Union considering some exceptions or carve-outs for India?
I don't think we are in the game of looking at exceptions. And the reason why is very simple. There is a transition period of 3 years. It's a period during which we are engaged with all our partners to explain what CBAM is about and have this carbon border adjustment mechanism. It is certainly not a protectionist tool, as some people would say. I think they would miss the point about what it is. It is a way for the EU to adhere to its commitment to a low carbon or carbon neutral economy. So it is our contribution to our global goals in terms of reduction of CO2 emissions. And if anyone wants to enter the EU market, it has to make sure there's a level playing field, because otherwise, if there are carbon leakage, industries coming and exporting to Europe with a strong carbon leakage in any product would be at a competitive advantage against European companies. So why would we let this while our own companies are subjected to emission trading system and have to pay? So if the companies are having their own mechanism of carbon offsetting, all the fine. They don't need the CBAM. And what we are saying also for the sectors which are high in carbon emission, take hydrogen. Well, actually, we are engaged with India in developing the green hydrogen. So maybe at the end, you will not need the CBAM measures, because in the meantime, you want to make sure that your hydrogen is turning green. So I think there is a lot of misconception or apprehensions, and precisely for that reason that we are engaged with the Indian authorities, the Indian business community. We have established workshops, we have reached out, we have explained what it is about so that they can prepare themselves, they know what it is about, and no one is taken by surprise. Right. And we are helping and accompanying our partners to adjust to this. And I think it goes also in their own interest, because the future is about low carbon emission industry, low carbon economy. So if it can be an accelerator for India, we will be super happy.
With that, it's a wrap on this edition of News Center. More news and updates continue right here.